Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Lin, and along with my colleague Daniel Carlo, we're from Burkart Flutes and Piccolos. And what an honor today. Today we have a very, very special guest, a longtime member of the Burkart family, known for her bold and dramatically characterized playing, concertizing soloist, a very dedicated chamber musician and educator, Miss Julietta Curenton. Hello, Julietta.
Hello, Ethan. So nice to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So thank you so much for being here. And what a, shall we say, interesting and important time we live in right now, right? And really, thank you for your time. We so appreciate it. And I should let everybody know that part of the reason that transpired this interview today is because Julietta's upcoming performance this Wednesday via the NFA, National Flute Association Summer Series portal this Wednesday evening, as well as her upcoming album that's going to drop later this summer. So we're so excited to get to know, find out more about these projects of yours. But before we start, let's all take a step back and please let our viewers know what was your journey to the flute? How did you get started?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Well, first, I just want to thank Burkart and the amazing Lillian Burkart for just being part of my musical family. When you ask about my story, I can't not mention her because she's such an integral part of it. So just thank you for having Ethan and Burkart Flutes, of course. My story began, when I was a young girl. I was 6 years old, and I come from a musical family. My father was a French horn player in the Army band Purging Zone, and he was also an educator prior to being in the band. He was a band director in Philadelphia school system, and so he also had knowledge of what instruments work for young minds, young kids. And so when he saw an interest, he saw that we were interested in playing, my sister and I, he gave her the clarinet and just gave me the flute, and that was it. My dad was he was a military man, very serious, and so he wasn't someone you questioned. You just kind of trusted him, and we did. And the minute that flute showed up in this green Bundy case, I fell in love with it. You remember those cases? Okay.
Oh, I probably have one in my closet somewhere.
They're very ugly cases, but the instrument was just very, very solid. And when I opened that case, I was like, this is my instrument. This works for me. And so we started taking lessons at an early age from my father. And I didn't get my first teacher until about 8 or 9. So that's what began. And I think my mother's also a pianist, and my brothers play the horn and trumpet. I think us playing together as a family is what organically brought music into my life.
Mm-hmm. And you went to a very well-known school in the United States. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did, yeah, Juilliard. Juilliard was phenomenal in so many ways. It just allowed me to figure out who I was as an artist. I first attended studying with the great Jeannie Baxter. And she, unfortunately, was only in school for about a year when I was there. She was transitioning to Carnegie Mellon. And so what happened, we were transferred into Carol Winsense's studio, which was also amazing. She's a very different teaching style, as of course she's a soloist, a Burkart artist.
And something you and Daniel have in common. Yeah, because Daniel also studied with Carol.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Daniel did his DMA at Stony Brook.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that was amazing. Well, Carol, and Daniel can attest to this, is that Carol is very much a teacher that teaches you to have your own voice. She's not someone that demands you do things like her, and so she's very good at bringing out the best in you. So I had a lot of technical work with Jeannie, And with Carol, it was just all very thorough. Like I remember one day walking into, she had a flute, harp, and guitar class. And I remember one day walking in, the room was dark, and she was laying on the floor. And she was like, "We're gonna have flute yoga today." So
Yeah.
teaching us how important it is to be well, to be physically well, and
Mhm.
and lean and good to your body, and how that you can incorporate that in your playing. So
Yeah.
she taught me just benefits of just a well taken care of life, and how that can influence your playing. So
Yeah.
yeah, with her
A
for
huge
3 years.
a huge part of it really is about her raising awareness in everything, and I mean, after observing so many master classes she does, it's all about the music. It's all about the music, and I definitely see a lot of that, with your performances, Julietta, and just working from Daniel day to day. Definitely, that is a huge part of her legacy, I say. So after Juilliard, you kind of took a interesting turn as far as your education path.
Yes, yes. This is where the story gets interesting. My plan, of course, we always have plans, but things end up differently in life. My plan was to stay at Juilliard and get my master's there. I knew I wanted to get my master's. Um, However, that year, my senior year of college, my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. And as I told you, my dad was this huge figure, musically speaking, in my life and in general, a huge figure. So when he ended up passing a year before my graduation, I just, you know, I knew I wanted to keep moving forward, but I didn't know how to do that staying in New York.
Mm.
I just needed to breathe and get away from what had just happened. So I, I also applied to Juilliard to study with the amazing Robert. That didn't work out, so I ended up going to the Royal Northern College of Music to study
Mm.
with Peter Lloyd, who is this amazing pedagogue. Um, he taught at Indiana for about a decade. I think at the same time Carol did, I believe. And he was, in the LSO. He was in the BBC Phil in his heyday. But he became this amazing teacher because he struggled with a lot of technical aspects in his playing, and he's open about this. Um, or he was open about this. He's deceased now. But he was very open about the struggles that he had, and so that's what strengthened his pedagogical skills. So I took a lesson with him when he came to Atlanta that April of 2003. Loved him. He loved me. He said, "Come." So I was in England by August 2003. So that was the year I graduated Juilliard. But then I went to the Royal Northern to be with him in Manchester. And I thought it was great because I had already went to a big name music school. And I just didn't want to do that at the time. I wanted technical work.
Mhm.
The aspect that Jeannie had begun with me. I wanted to continue that as well because Carol had taken care of so many things. I wanted to focus on technique. So he brought me in August 2003, and we just focused on things like vibrato, focused on intonation, focused on sound, focused on breathing. I had tendonitis issues from school, from Juilliard, because I was playing so much, and he completely fixed that. You know,
Wow.
so many changes came because of treatment of me, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Speaking of Jeannie, again, just over the years, because part of my job is to attend these different flute events, and
Yeah.
something that she always says is, throughout your lifetime, your first three teachers, right? You got the teacher that introduced you to the flute, and then you have a teacher that teaches you music, and then another one that kind of refines all these little bumps, right, in your artistry. And sounds like you've had all three.
I definitely have. I definitely have.
Yeah.
That's
So
profound.
your master's program, I think in England it's a little bit different. It's a 1 year program, isn't
It is. You can opt for two. It's a 1 year in terms of classes. And the second year, you can just do a post-grad diploma, which means you take lessons and you work on your paper.
it?
So
Okay.
it wasn't a required year, but the first year is required. And then, of course, you write a thesis.
You have to write that. Okay. So, and we're going to come back to that thesis because the story you told us about your thesis, I think really reflects what is going on today. And that thesis was done, back in 2004, right? So almost 15, 16 years ago. And I think it still resonates with what's going on in society today. So after your master's, 2004, you were at the tip-top shape of your flute playing, right? All the problems are solved, and like you're ready. Yeah. So you came back to the States, and what was next? Like, what did you have planned for yourself?
Oh, I felt unstoppable, Ethan. Felt absolutely unstoppable. It's just I was like, I'm gonna take every audition that's out there, every orchestral audition, every solo competition audition. So I applied for the Baltimore Symphony opening and the NSO opening, National Symphony Orchestra. They were in the same year. And I did my pre-screening tapes while I was in England. Like I knew
Wow.
that when I came back, I was going to be auditioning for those. And so I got through those rounds and got to the semifinals of both. I did those, and I also did the Kobe. Everything was in 1 year, 2004.
That's a lot of music to learn. That is
It's a
a lot of music to learn. Yeah.
But I had nothing but time, so I just grabbed all the music and just did it all. Kobe, and then the NFA Young Artist Competition. So 4 things. And I was like, let's see what pops up. Because, one of the advantages of having a teacher like Carol, like she kind of blazed a trail. As I know her, she had a former class for the NFA, and it was about trailblazing. And so she is a trailblazer in a lot of ways. And so a lot of us have tried to follow her students have tried to follow her footsteps in terms of entering competitions in order to gain management and to get a foothold in the industry. So you may wonder, like, why did I go for the orchestral auditions? I'm not quite sure. I just did it because it seemed like the path to go on.
Sure.
And it's the most lucrative path, of course. But I figured out down the line, it's not something that was really inspiring to me. So I didn't continue.
I think orchestral auditions, I think, is something as we all went to school for flute performance. And really, how did Daniel and I end up to be where we are today? And I think a big reason is because we did dabble here and there, try, and then eventually we find out what works for us, what works for our personality, lifestyle. So yeah, so and this is, I think, a good advice probably from you to the younger flutists out there. Try it all. Don't box yourself in, right?
And it depends, like you said, it depends on your mission in life, what your goals are. If you're comfortable being in an orchestra and being part of this big voice, then that's something you should do. But if not, and you have a lot to say, then don't be afraid to veer off into a different path, because opportunities come if you come. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of a lot to say, like, here's my little Julietta Curenton fangirl moment. I was there 2005 in San Diego when you played the final round of the NFA Young Artist Competition. And this doesn't happen to me very often, but I remember you played the Hugh Fantasy, you played the slow movement of CBE Bach, and then you played the Jolie Ray Chantolinos. And talk about just the poise, the ability to talk about, here is my voice and you're going to listen to it. That is just so, I keep on using the word inspiring. I wish there's a better word for it, inspiring, but it just, I've never seen anyone play the flute like that before. It was solid. It was like a rock. And so that was my first impression. Really, that was my first impression of you. And of course, years later, now we're friends, and I just feel very blessed. But tell us, we were talking about so much music to learn in 2004. What was your process for preparation for this competition?
Oh, the competition. Yeah, it was a 3 round process. So different music for every single round. I believe the first, I can't believe I remember this, but that shows you how much work was put into it. The Telemann Fantasy, the Demersmann Fantasy as well, those were part of our pre screening tapes. So we had, I believe it happens during the summer. So I got the application like around April, May. And so I only had about like 2 months to get that tape together. So yes, we were using tapes then, or CDs rather, CDs. None of this online portal stuff, but it was great. Actually, mini discs.
Oh,
So
you're gonna have to
anyway,
explain what that is to Daniel.
oh my gosh, mini disc is that ancient? Oh, crazy. Oh, well,
So,
yeah.
but the format is similar, right? I know there were different rounds. Once you get past the tape round, you move
hmm
on to the,
You move on
the yep, the
to the
semi.
semifinals. Very much set up like an orchestral audition. So you move on to the semis, completely new repertoire, and then to the finals, completely new repertoire. And that's what you heard: the CPE Bach, the Hugh, and the Chantalinos. The round before, I believe it was Airs Volaks by Doppler, and a few other very fluty works, a contemporary work and a modern work. So yeah, it was basically 12 pieces altogether, 12
Wow.
pieces. And
So
I think
as the rounds, went on, were you like, oh, it's in the bag, I got this, or like, what was your mindset?
I wish that was my mindset. Absolutely not. No, I joke because I didn't see any of that year's convention. I didn't see anything, nothing.
Mm,
That year, Claire Chase was giving a performance. I didn't see that. I was in the practice room, like constantly at. Luckily, I was staying with a friend in La Jolla, and so
mhm,
I would come to the convention for the actual auditions, and then just go to a practice room the rest of the night.
mm,
So it was like, let me stay focused. That's generally kind of how I am when I'm in that mode. I do have to stay focused.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I felt like, oh, there were 2 other competitors that I knew that went to my school as well. Gloria, Sue, and Mercedes.
Yes,
Remember
Mercedes.
Mercedes?
Yes.
Yeah. And so we all knew each other. And so I just knew they were fierce competition. But for me, the way I've always treated competitions, I focus because it's not just to win. That is the goal, but it's to like be as engrossed in the music as possible so I can communicate something to the audience. When I'm not focused, that doesn't always happen. You really need to know what it is you're trying to say in the music, and that works for performances. It works for competitions. It works for everything that you do. So that's why I want to remain focused. So it was
Mhm.
constantly in the practice room. I remember even the night before the finals, we were friends together, and we snuck into the room where I was going to be performing the next morning, and they listened to all of my reps. It allowed me to play it from memory. It was like a mock final audition, and they were
Wow.
very gracious to do that. So that was my 2004, 2005. Um, sorry, 2004,
Was it 2004? I think 2005. 2000.
2005. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that was your 2005 NFA experience, and thank you for sharing your secrets. And I hope our viewers will, focus. Right. That is the key.
Yeah.
So you brought up Carol being a trailblazer and her, I would say, her formula to her success, where she is, this international, legendary master teacher and soloist. So you won NFA, and how did that set the tone for your career path going from that point?
Hmm, great question. I think it's in my mind. It solidified me as a soloist, because I'm like, if the flute community has given me this type of validation, that means a lot. That means a lot. Like I found some success in competitions where it's been multi-instruments, but for the flute community to give me like a gold star, what it felt like, it gave me that extra boost of confidence. What I did, we hadn't talked about this, but prior, actually, it wasn't prior, it was around the same time. I always struggled with this concept of being a performer and being an educator because I came from parents that were both. You know, my dad was a band director, but then he was in the Army band. My mom was a just arts advocate, but also taught in the DC public schools for a while, and gave plenty of outreach. She was in Philadelphia. So I always knew that arts was related to community. So I was never one that could just be like, oh, I'm only going to be a soloist, even though it's something I love to do. So I became a band director in Virginia for a little bit first, for a co-band director, not the main one, a co-band director for about a year. And that was my way of giving back to the community. But I also—
And what grades was this elementary, middle school, high school?
Middle school. Yes, the impressionistic age. They're like, middle school age. It was at a private school, two private schools here in the DC area. So I did that, enjoyed it. And I also had 30 private students at music schools all around the area. So I was teaching. I was really teaching. But it was giving me meaning because I'm like, okay, I've learned all this music. I've won competitions. What can I give back? And then the opposite started happening. Then after a year and a half, I was like, I'm not really playing. So I hooked up with my friend Bridget Kibbe, world-renowned harpist. We picked up our duo again. We did that in college and won a few competitions in college. So we picked up and started touring. We toured for Young Concert Artists because she's a young concert artist. And we just toured everywhere for a couple of years. And then the brochure came in the mail about Ensemble Connect, which was a Juilliard, Carnegie Hall, Wild Music Institute program. And it would give me the chance to go back to New York, be a fellow, which means teaching in the school system, which I already been doing, but in the New York City public system, and give approximately 30 concerts a month for them.
How many concerts? 30 concerts a month?
Yes, it was a lot. Outreach concerts, but we would give concert at Carnegie Hall as well. It was variety. It was contemporary music. It was new music. It was old music. And the program was outreach heavy, where we were each assigned a school, and we would go there maybe 4 or 5 times a month. But then we would bring a program there in an interactive way to our schools to enhance their music program. So we were learning about how to bring music in an interactive way to the communities, So we were playing and teaching, which is everything that I love. So I felt like that was great for me at that time period, and it solidified to me the need to be active in my community and not to have that mindset that separates me from my community as an artist. So now this is where I am now. There's lots of things that happen in between, but now I'm at Brooklyn College of Music, and I still solo. Just a couple of concertos were written for me this year, and I also play with Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, and I still do a lot of outreach, incorporate that. And I'm just glad that program just gave me the assurance that that's what I could do. It's not really just about being an artist. It's about how can you make this relevant. And that's something I really wish most artists would get. I think a lot of us in Ensemble Connect got it, but it's not something we're taught, right? In conservatories, we're in a box. We're like, we got to get this right. We got to be perfectionists. Or universities, we're all saying, we have to get this music right. But, we're so disconnected sometimes from what's actually happening out in the world because we're so focused on our craft. And so, I like to get out of that box. I remember the first school that I was placed at, MS 72. in Jamaica, Queens. And it's known to be a rough area, but you know, that's where they sent us. They sent us to places that were in need. And my particular school's middle school band program, and 60% of the kids were in foster care. So that's a huge number, just to kind of show you how difficult it was for them. And so they were pretty, you know, they weren't well behaved when I came in. It took us a while to give them their instruments, but we did things that were they could relate to. Like I did lots of rhythm raps, you know, and helped them to bring out their creativity while simultaneously learning music. And so they took to things like that, and it helped with their behavior. Some days we were unsuccessful. That's the nature of the New York public school system. But I think that we made an impact.
So you're saying, you know, these kids can be a little rebellious. Are you what you would call it, a positive reinforcement type of teacher, or are you a tiger mom? What is what is Julietta like as a teacher?
Oh, I love that question. Oh man, no, I'm not a tiger mom. I'm of the feeling because 60% of them were in foster care. You don't know what those home environments are like. So I'm of the mindset that I'm the encourager. I'm the encourager, and I'm the one to help lift their self-esteem and show them what they're capable of. So that's always who I was. I was a cheerleader as well as educator, because I mean, a lot of them came in with really bad attitudes, like almost every day. So it was a challenging place to be. Actually, I think after I left that year, we had Ensemble Connect. Didn't go back to that particular school because it was like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Lean on Me.
Yes.
With Morgan Freeman. And
Yep.
it was a situation kind of similar to that. Yeah. But these are the areas where we found the greatest. These were the underserved areas.
And then tell us just a little bit more about, you know, other ensemble experiences and also these artist programs that you were involved with as well, such as Astral and Imani.
Astral Artists was incredible. Continuing on after Ensemble Connect, on the tippy end of my fellowship, I already applied to Astral Artists and made their multi-round process and got to the finals. Became one of the artists, so I was very fortunate to gain that award and that validation. And they're located in Philadelphia, and so the founder is a woman named Vera Wilson, who's just a phenom, and she used to work with Curtis, but ventured out and started Astral Artists because she wanted to give young artists an opportunity to build a solo career. And she wanted to kind of, not only build our career, but build us and show us how we can do that. It was like a mentoring organization. So what we did, we were given a big recital at Rittenhouse Square in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. And we were given a concerto debut at the Kimmel Center, which was amazing.
Which concerto did you play? The
Mercadante E minor.
Nice.
Yes. I mean, you know it. So I mean, flutists are getting to know it. It's not like as common as Mozart, but I think Mercadante was incredible. Wrote 6 concertos, and they should all be played more. So
absolutely, and that third movement, killer.
The third movement, it's so technically hard. That last line of just 30-second notes, you know. But it was so much fun. So Astral Artists, in addition to those concerts, we were also still going to the community. It was something that Vera understood. So we would, every time we had a main concert with Astral, usually a chamber concert amidst like 3 or 4 Astral Artists. Every time we did that, we would have 2 or 3 adjoining community concerts. So we go into nursing homes, go into shelters, bring the music there, and then played in our concerts. So again, it aligns with my values. Wonderful. And they also brought to my attention how passionate I am about bringing African American music to the center. So they created a whole festival based off an idea I had. They called it Spiritual Voyages. So it was one concert of African American artists, one of Asian American, one of Latin American, just to celebrate these different cultures and to celebrate their voices within the classical music genre, because classical music, yeah, what what do you think about, like, when you go to a classical concert, the most played, composers, probably Beethoven, you know, Tchaikovsky, these are all Western names, and they're amazing works. But there's so much more out there, so much more, and I think that that's what we need to add to our canon, especially if we're going to think about diversifying the arts and art representation in the audience. So I think that Astral got that, and they really made me own it. Vera really made me own it. It's like, this is what you're passionate about. This is so I love that.
Wow. I mean, that I think what you're saying now, and now we have to go back to your thesis. I think this is a great segue to go back to that thesis you wrote when you were in England, because in order to truly embrace and champion the word diversity, we really have to just be aware geographically, the historical aspect, and everything. So your thesis, tell us about, what was your thesis on?
Ah, it was so interesting that it came to my heart like that. I guess coming out of Juilliard, I realized how many talented, amazing people were out there. But I also realized that I was one of few African Americans, and I always knew that. But Juilliard brought it home, and so I wanted to do my own case study on why that is, and why it's also that we don't see more people of color in the audience with varied ages. Why it seems to be one demographic there, over 60 and white. So I wrote my paper on the socialization and demographical factors that make one a participant in the arts. And a participant, not in the sense of being the artist on stage, but being someone that just generally attends classical music concerts. So I looked at a few studies, survey of participation in the arts. The National Endowment of the Arts puts together the survey almost every year. And so I followed the survey from 1982 all the way to 2002. It was only 2004, so when I wrote it. So I followed these surveys and just followed the trajectories throughout that. But I also sent out my own surveys, about 30 different surveys to friends who were non-musical, but were actively participating in the arts, like we're constantly going to concerts. I wanted to see for myself what factors led to them doing that. So it was two different sections. And the findings were interesting. I found out a lot of things, but just a few things. The highlighting factors that really made someone want to participate in the arts were things like lessons throughout all of their adolescence, not just like before the age of 12, but lessons all the way through, like 24, like long time. Their whether or not their parents were college educated, their early exposure to the arts, whether or not they went to museums, whether or not they went to whether or not they were actively involved in them, and higher incomes, of course, if their family made money and they had means to be able to go be active. So all of these were like socialization factors, which I realized, and maybe a lot of this makes sense to a lot of people, but I just really wanted to see it on paper to see why it was that I see people like me not making it to the levels that I was at. And I think it comes down to those socialization factors, whether or not they had those lessons, whether or not they had money, whether or not they had a sense of education, whether or not their parents were educated. It all starts from their beginning experiences. So immediately I was just like, okay, this is all related to education. This is all related to education. How can I help educate those underserved areas to not only just participate in the arts, but receive the benefits of the arts? Because one of the arts, when you learn an instrument at a young age, I mean, you're learning so many different things. You're learning discipline, like you're learning, problem solving skills.
And
You're
working together, right? In an
working
ensemble.
together as a chamber
Yeah.
ensemble. Like these are skills that translate even beyond the arts. And
Yeah.
other organizations like Play on Philly have done the research about that. And so, like Play on Philly, they're not trying to. I don't know if you've heard of Play on Philly, but Stanford Thompson put this amazing program together in West Philly. It's free for all the young kids there, and basically, the goal of the program is to give them tools that make them better citizens, that they can give more back to the community. It's not to make them musicians, it's to make them more productive. So I mean, music can do that, and it can create better musicians. So I think my paper helped me to see that.
And something that, and Dan, you probably are counting how many times she said this, giving back to the communities. Like, you have said that so many times in the last 30, 40 minutes. And just, I think that really, it's so important for you to set an example, provide them the exposure and then the tools they need in order to be the next Julietta on stage, right? And I think that is so powerful, and it really it just kind of goes well because, like, as I mentioned in the very beginning, you've been a long time friend and family member of Burkart flutes and piccolos, and I believe Lillian was there when you bought your flute, right? Lillian was the one who sold you, and that because of the current climate, because of everything that's happening, Lillian really feels like there is an obligation for her to give back to the community. So you probably heard this in 2 weeks ago in the same interview with Carol, the Trailblazing Pioneer interview. Burkart, we've officially partnered with YCA, Young Concert Artists, as well as the Harmony program in New York. And by donating instruments, because we're a flute and piccolo company, and you probably know this, younger kids, their exposure to the piccolo is not as frequent, I would guess. So now their students have these wonderful instruments that, and the organization is very responsible in a way to pair the level of the students with the level of the instruments. So big shout out to the Harmony program, just wonderful people. So sounds like your thesis, what you went through with various the Astral Artists, and your own experience and combining being an educator and an artist led you to who you are today, which inspired you for your upcoming album.
Yes. I'm so excited about this. So excited. Yes.
So tell us how did you go about, where did these pieces come about? And I understand, like, I think most of them, if not all, were written for you or transcribed for you.
Mm-hmm. They were. And something else about that thesis before I move into my album, something else I found out, because the majority of people that I surveyed intentionally, they were college students, but they were also African American. And so, I found out that 75% of them, because I asked them what would lure them into a classical music concert. 75% of them said they will be lured in, if they were interested in the works that were being performed. So the programming was most important to them. So I guess with Astral Artists, I gave a few concerts for the Philadelphia Chamber Music Society, because I won this grant called the Musical Fund Society of Philadelphia. So that came with several concerts. And so I wanted to just start commissioning, creating new music, sort of in the same vein that Carol Winston has done, but creating new music by people with different perspectives. So Amanda Harburg, who is now like this huge figure in the NFA, but she first wrote for flute for me for my Philadelphia Chamber Society debut, and she wrote a piece called Feathers in Wax, based off of the myth of Icarus, and it was just such a hit. We wrote it for that concert. Immediately, the NFA took it up, and I was so happy for that. I'm so happy for her. So yeah, she's been like an artistic partner of mine, and she's a woman, also a Juilliard graduate.
Yep.
And she has her own voice. She's not someone who is into like the esoteric, contemporary music. It's more accessible music that's steeped like in, folk music. So on this album, there's going to be 3 pieces of hers: Poem and Transformation, Prayer, and Feathers and Wax. So it's to celebrate our time over the last.
And I think for the piece Feather and Wax, if any of the viewers that are interested in which is everyone really, they can. There is a printed copy. I think you mentioned a presser.
Yes.
It's available, and also to know what this piece, to hear what this piece sounds like, visit your website, jcurenton.com, right? And last name is spelled CURENTON.com.
Absolutely. All of these pieces on my album will be, they are published presser, and so and the other 2 pieces are by the indomitable Evelyn Simpson Curenton, also known as my mother. People must know her. She is a force. It's written for Kathleen Battle, Jesse Norman. There was a big spirituals concert done in the early 80s that James Levine conducted with the Met Orchestra with Kathleen Battle Norman. Most of the arrangements were my mother's. And so I've just been talking about fangirl. I've been a fangirl since I was a kid, so.
That's incredible.
Yes. So when the opportunity came to commission artists for this musical fund society, I also thought of my mother. And so I was like, please write spirituals for us. We don't have many of these in our repertoire. So she wrote these 3 spirituals for me, Get on Board, Calvary, and Little David. And when I say write, I mean arrange, because these spirituals are very old. They go back to slavery time. So these are her renditions of them, and they're very colorful and span. Oh, she's such a musical genius. They span so many different genres. You'll hear honky-tonk, you'll hear gospel, you'll hear classical, you'll hear Appalachia. Just they span the evolution of African American in the U.S. So they're so colorful and so great. And then Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Yes.
You've probably heard this around. I've seen different videos now on Zoom playing this piece, and I'm glad. It's powerful. It's been powerful since the Civil Rights Movement. And these were songs that, like, for instance, like the Selma boycott. These were songs this song was sung in African American churches prior to these big boycotts as a unifying effort, because the music, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. These were like unifying songs that would unify a race in a really difficult time where they were being oppressed. So that's why you keep seeing Lift Every Voice and Sing come back now, because Black Lives Matter movement reminds us of the civil rights movement. And it's basically giving strength to the oppressed. So I'm glad this is coming out now. My recording's coming out now, because this is the time to remember what we've gone through as a race, as a nation, and that we have more work to do. Yeah.
But this particular piece, I mean, it really, like you said, signifies unity. There's so much divisiveness going on right now. Really, it's an important piece. It's a well-known piece, but I think that everyone should definitely know this piece. It's just so important. And talk about a span of different genres. Your upcoming program for this Wednesday evening is quite interesting.
It is. It is.
Yeah. So tell us about the three pieces that you'll be playing.
Okay. Yeah. So never to be one that is just. I've been told that my programming is on the unique side, and I like that. I like that. I like to because I don't just play classical. I mainly play classical, but there's other genres that I feel like I'm well versed in. So there's three pieces. The first piece is Syrinx by Debussy, very well known staple in the flute rep, and just beautiful. And I love the story of Syrinx. And then The Great Train Race by Ian Clark. And I'll tell you why I chose this because The Great Train Race, there were effects from that Ian used masterfully to make the flute sound like a train. And if you listen to on my album, Get On Board, it has the same train motif because the train in Get On Board, if you know the word, get on board, little children, get on board, the children, there's room for many a more. That was a code song that slaves used to show people that the Underground Railroad was coming. So it was their time to escape from slavery. So that's why you hear that train motif. It's a reference to the Underground Railroad. So when I was doing Ian Clark's piece, I was like, well, some of those motifs are there. And it is reminiscent to me of Get On Board, which I really, really, really like. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece, To God Be the Glory, it's a Curenton arrangement of Andre Krauss, very famous piece, My Tribute, which also vamps into To God Be the Glory. And I guess I wanted to incorporate that to be an uplifting presence in this time, you know, I'm actually a believer in God. And I just believe that he loves all of us, loves his children. And that even though there's difficulty right now, we can gain help from above. So I just wanted to offer that. And I know many people have many different beliefs. But I wanted to offer what encourages me in this time. And that's reminiscent of my album as well, because there are gospel pieces on that album, but they're done in a classical form. So all of this is reminiscent of what you'll hear on the album.
I just love how well thought out it is. Like, I mean, it really went beyond what I can imagine, like the way how you actually try to integrate the African American history through Western music, and then end with the program with another, just an important piece of work, and not to put you on the spot or anything. but
Not to do that.
but
Never.
I personally can't wait till Wednesday to hear your flute play. So can you give us just a little bit of the sample of sometimes I feel like, oh, sorry, the To God Be the Glory?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, what do I even say? I'm literally getting teary. Just it's so positive and it's so beautiful, and I think it's exactly what we need right now. And you know, and your good friend Jennifer Grimm, who is the program chair of NFA this year. Oh my God, I'm like literally crying. um, who has been doing such a beautiful job, I think, connecting everybody and giving us the guidance, the exposure that we need with the African American flute and music community. So as an artist, as an educator, what are some of the advices that you would give to our younger generation, and what can we do as colleagues, as part of this community, do right now and contribute?
Oh, excellent questions, Ethan. Excellent question. I think we're all thinking about these things, how we can give. I think that you work, just not stress it too much, but it's how much I believe in Burkart. You've shown me what Lillian has done in terms of her efforts in giving flute to the harmony program, just giving them away. I think that right there is a huge model of what to do. Find the underserved areas, serve them. And notice I don't use underprivileged. I hate that word. We use that a lot in the arts, that just, to me, just sounds like, I just think it's put in a negative way to make the poorer parts of our country sound small and diminish them. Underserved, I think, is more accurate. They're not given the same opportunities. As I saw in my paper, they're not given education. They're not given what I was given. Alexandria Public School Systems in Virginia, they're not given. So when Lillian gave to the Harmony program with certain areas, we need more of that. We need more artists actually that are willing to bridge the gap. So that's what I would say to artists, and especially artists that are, top notch, going to the Juilliards, going to the Curtis. Be a part of your community programs when you're in school. Most of these conservatories have community programs. Like Juilliard has the Morse Fellowship. I believe there's a program that Curtis has as well. I always forget the name, unfortunately. But they go into the community. Be a part of, make music more accessible, because now we see the model changing. We don't know what's going to happen after January next year. We're all going to have to be very creative as performers. And so it's important not to keep the status quo of playing music for the elite, for the people who are most educated. No, we need to make it intentional about bringing music to those who do not have as much. For a piece of our profits, like Lillian did, a piece of our profits, just giving that. Just always being aware of the poor and being aware of those who do not have what we have, and equalizing that, like bringing equality, giving back. I believe if all the artists do that, then it can be really effective in this field. And I think we would be a lot more diverse. And so I'm not speaking just to the Black artists, I'm speaking to all the artists in our field. All of us should be giving back in some way, whether you're teaching, whether you're giving interactive performances, whether you're giving money. Programs need money, lots of money, okay? Because they're not, the government doesn't subsidize these programs. So do what you can, find how you can give back. Your community organizations, and get involved. And I think that helps keep you grounded. One organization I love working with is Orpheus, and they do a lot of that. We go into homes for Alzheimer's patients. They go into schools, give private lessons. It's the grounding effort. And so every time we have like a Carnegie Hall concert, we have an open dress rehearsal. And you'll see scores and scores of kids from different schools that are just there observing. So they've made it part of their practice, which is why I really do respect them as well. So that's what I do. That's what my family does. And I hope artists will new artists, upcoming artists will continue to do that.
And I think another just really important thing is to keep the conversation going. Like, we have to be candid. You know, this needs to be on our minds. Talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues, you know, your mentor. I think we're all here to learn and there's a lot to learn, you know, as we found out in the past, you know, 3-4 months. So with that said, everyone that's watching this interview, please, please, please tune in this Wednesday, July 22nd for Julietta's NFA Summer Series Celebration Concert. And also, you know, talk about giving back and keep the community informed. Julietta, anytime, you know, you have a performance, you're doing something for the community, please keep us posted. We would be happy to share. You know, I know definitely via our company, even personally as a dear friend, I'd be honored to do that. And everyone also please tune in for Julietta's summer album that will be dropped later this summer, and we'll make sure to keep everybody informed and posted. And I think at the end, to wrap this up, we will be playing a radio version of Get On Board, which is one from the 3 spirituals arranged by Julietta's mother, Evelyn Simpson Curenton. Julietta, thank you for being you. You're so awesome.
Thank you, Ethan and Daniel. This was a wonderful time to communicate. Thank you.
And let's please do it again soon. And I can't wait to see you in person when this is over. Please come visit.
Over.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to. I will rush to the Burkart booth.
Please do. All right. You take care. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All aboard!